But Joy, you were, I mean, let's be honest, you were no different than Nicole or Rachel Maddow.
Well, only in one way was I different. I'm a black woman doing the thing.
One of the worst woke journalists in America is making a comeback and already playing the victim. We're going to break down this journalism drama plus some Democratic infighting and a highly controversial Trump appointee, all on today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where we take on the craziest ideas from across the internet, our politics, and our media, all from an independent perspective. Up first, guys, I mentioned the one and only Joy Reid, who for a very long time was one of the main faces and voices on MSNBC, the left-wing cable news network, and I've been a critic of her, honestly, back to probably 2017, 2018. It really bothered me from the beginning of her career. She had this whole controversy where she just openly lied, and she had all these old problematic blog posts where she, said very homophobic things and very, crazy conspiracy theories. And I'm not a cancel culture person, so I was totally willing to forgive her, but she denied ever writing them, blamed hackers, and then the FBI investigated it and found no evidence of hacking, and she never admitted that she lied. So to me, she never should have been given such a high-profile place in modern American journalism, and I think we know why she was, which I'll get into later, but it wasn't because of her merit or her integrity. Well, she was eventually, a few months ago, let go from MSNBC in, I don't know, I never want to celebrate somebody losing work or their team getting fired, but what seemed pretty solid decision just from a ratings and journalism ethics perspective. But she's making a comeback. She just announced her new YouTube show, and she started discussing her exit from MSNBC in podcast interviews, including one with Katie Couric, which we're going to break down. Here is the clip where she offers her grand explanation for why she was fired from MSNBC, and spoiler alert, Joy Reid is playing the victim again. Take a listen.
But Joy, you were, I mean, let's be honest, you were no different than Nicole or Rachel Maddow.
Well, only in one way was I different. I'm a black woman doing the thing. You know what I mean? And so I'm not different, but I'm different. Because
I was just talking in terms of your criticizing of Trump.
100%.
Yeah.
So I think that there is there's a difference for Trump in hearing the kinds of criticisms specifically out of a black woman. It bothers him in a way it doesn't bother him like anything else. He's got this sort of tick about race, and about, criticism coming specifically from a black woman, because we've seen him lay out and dish out real, abuse against black women journalists. So I think and also I did a specific thing, which was I tried to constantly unpack the racial history of the country, which is very much against the sort of Project 2025 thing. And it's something I can do in a certain capacity because of my background, because not only am I a black woman, but I come from immigrant parents who come from what Donald Trump would consider shithole countries, but that have I have a take on race that is different.
Wow. So, shocker, guys. They just fired her, not because her ratings are terrible, not because she said too many insane things that went viral and damaged the reputation of the network, but because she is a black woman. Even though, for context, guys, the show that replaced her has multiple minority hosts. So that's kind of an important point there. And I'm sorry, I'm going to say the quiet part out loud. I'm going to say the offensive thing that people are too scared to say. It is particularly ironic for Joy Reid to play the victim and claim that, she was under fire and fired because she's a black woman, when, first off, on the Trump thing, Trump has a checkered past of comments about race, to be sure, but this idea that he particularly lashes out at black journalists, no, babe. He lashes out hard at anyone who criticizes him, and that includes journalists who are black, white, purple, or whatever. I mean, one of his biggest enemies of all time is Rosie O'Donnell, and he really hates Chuck Todd and plenty of other people. It's not just like he goes after black women journalists who criticize him. I don't really think that's a thing. But back to Joy, we have to be so for real. We have to be so honest. If Joy was a white woman, she never would have been given her big show in her prime slot on MSNBC in the first place. We all know that. They only had a couple of black hosts. They were desperate for diversity, so they put somebody with no talent. And I'm saying that objectively. She's not good at this. She constantly says insane things. She has incredibly hostile and rude to her guests on the extremely rare occasion she ever has anybody who has a slight disagreement with her. And she's constantly saying things that are not true or that are extreme and unhinged. I mean, remember, guys, here was her big election analysis. Take a listen to this.
But Republican voters don't vote that way. They don't vote based on economics or based on the benefits they're getting economically from the president. They're increasingly, from the Tea Party on, they're voting on race. They're voting on this idea of an invasion of brown people over the border. The idea that they can't get whatever job they want. A black person got it, therefore drive all the blacks out of the colleges, get rid of DEI. That is what they're voting on. They're just voting specifically on racial animus. At this stage, it isn't about economics.
No.
Yes, because now that Trump is president and his administration is in power, they're going to drive all the blacks out of colleges. Very serious analysis. That's totally coming true. Like, seriously, she got paid presumably millions of dollars for this kind of commentary. And it's just one example of many of her saying untrue or hysterical or outrageous things. And then, of course, using the identity shield whenever she was criticized for it, or ultimately fired for being such a massive liability for the network. Here's some reporting from Outkick's Bobby Burrick that lists some of Joy's pretty recent highlights, or I guess you'd have to call them lowlights. While Maddow Wallace and just about every other host at MSNBC have made comments that would be a fireable offense at any other network, no one handled their platform more recklessly than Reid. MSNBC didn't fire Reid because she was a black woman with strong opinions. The network removed her because her commentaries were consistently mean-spirited, racially charged, propagandistic, and potentially defamatory. Here were some of Reid's claims on air in the weeks and months before her firing. Red states only keep black people alive to fill their factories, while their white leaders utter the N-word in private. Missouri is a modern-day slave state in which women are also the property of their husbands. To be clear, these aren't verbatim quotes. This is him paraphrasing things she has said, but I remember her saying some of these, and he's not mischaracterizing them. For example, she suggested that Trump staged the first assassination attempt on his life. She said that American voters had a moral obligation to, quote, keep Hitler out of the White House. She called Senator Mark Kelly, a moderate Democrat who is white, a mayonnaise sandwich on Wonder Bread white, whatever that means. She then said that the billionaire right is working behind the scenes to bring apartheid to California like they have it in Texas. So this is not a serious person. This is not a real journalist. This is a person who exploited their identity, if we're being so for real, and the boxes they check off on the census at a highly liberal network, super sensitive to diversity, but with almost exclusively white hosts, to gain promotions and levels of seniority and a platform she never deserved. Then to survive despite terrible performance, clinging on for a long time, despite so many fireable offenses and examples of terrible, terrible journalism that is just totally inaccurate and outlandish and besmirches the network's reputation, and then was ultimately finally fired and now has the audacity to play the victim and say, oh, it's just because I'm a black woman. No, Joy, at some point, just maybe one day, you will take a look in the mirror and take some accountability, but who knows? Maybe not. Maybe she'll just build up an adoring YouTube audience, and all her kind of ex-MSNBC viewers will flock to her and tell her how wonderful she is, and there'll be no pushback whatsoever, and she can just get crazier and crazier and descend further into online echo chambers and lunacy. Smart money's on exactly that happening, actually, rather than any sort of introspection or change or growth. But I do hope that maybe she could see the light, but I personally will not be holding my breath. And I just don't think people are buying this anymore. Really, I mean, sure, there will always be some small diehard base of like ultra liberal wine moms who's going to love Joy Reid and will nod along. Yes, you're right. America's so racist and so bad. That could be the only reason you got fired. Oh, I feel so bad for you, poor victim. But I really think like most people are not having this anymore. Like 2020 is over. We're not falling for this constant victim narrative, especially from people who so clearly benefited from DEI and kind of being promoted for their identity in the first place. It's just not going to convince most people, because I think the fraudulence and the cynical nature of the exploitation of a lot of this identity stuff has really become clear to most Americans, left, right, and center, and they're simply not buying it. Even the Democrats and liberals and progressives that I talk to on a regular basis are sick of the identity politics stuff, but Joy Reid certainly is not. It's really all she knows, and I don't think she's going to be able to quit it. And if the current culture and the current ethos keeps moving in its current trajectory, she's going to fade into irrelevance. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a good thing for the state of modern journalism. But you guys will have to let me know what you think in the comments below. Please do make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Do hit that like button while you're at it. And make sure you're subscribed to my second channel. I just uploaded a crazy video reacting to insane Instagram reels, not even political, just like cringe and AI slop and wild stuff that my friends send me to troll me on my bonus channel. So subscribe to the link in the description. Remember to send me voice notes for my Voicemail Friday episodes, where I react to your woke horror stories and your personal life scenarios and give you my advice and my feedback. I have another exciting episode planned for Friday, and I'm going to keep doing them. So do send in voice notes at the link in the description. Check out the merch line, the merch items, they're available below. And now let's talk about more Democratic drama, because this is kind of a scandal. This is some seriously hot tea that is being spilled in the Democratic Party right now, as they're just descending into open infighting after Karine Jean-Pierre, who is a very prominent face of the Democratic Party because she was Biden's press secretary, the face and spokesperson for the Biden administration for the last several years. She just announced that she is quitting the party and going independent and hawking a new book about it. The Daily Caller reports Karine Jean-Pierre leaving Democratic Party. Former White House press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre is leaving the Democratic Party and writing that its betrayal led to former President Joe Biden dropping out of the 2024 election, according to a statement from Legacy Lit, who is publishing her upcoming book. We'll come back to that, but the party betraying Biden is not why he had to drop out. The cognitive decline that Karine Jean-Pierre helped cover up is actually why he had to drop out, but we'll come back to that, trust me. Jean-Pierre announced her new book, Independent, A Look Inside a Broken White House, Outside the Party Lines, set to publish in October 2025 on Wednesday. The book, according to her publisher, Legacy Lit, encourages Americans to vote their values and maintain individuality within party lines. Jean-Pierre didn't come to her decision to be an independent lightly. She has served 2 American presidents, Obama and Biden. The book description from Legacy Lit reads, in 2020, she joined Biden's campaign as a senior advisor, becoming Harris's chief of staff, and then 2 years later, White House press secretary. She takes us through the 3 weeks that led to Biden abandoning his bid for a second term and the betrayal by the Democratic Party that led to his decision. The statement from the publisher continues. Wow. So there's really so much to say about this. I'm struggling to know where to begin. But first, this is humiliating for Joe Biden and for the Democratic Party to have a presidential administration end, and then the single most high-profile person, other than like the president and vice president associated with that administration, come out and publicly quit your party, say, I'm out of here, yeet, going independent. I mean, that's super embarrassing. That really does not reflect well on your party or your administration. That's unheard of in modern time in happening so quickly. We've had top Trump officials and Obama officials kind of drift away and then even become critics or flip to the other side, but it usually doesn't happen like a couple of weeks after the administration ends. That's diabolical. That's kind of savage, just immediately throwing your boss under the bus like that. And it is a real embarrassing and humiliating moment for the Biden administration. At the same time, I also don't buy it. I don't trust her. And it seems like a transparent grift to me. Charlie Cook of National Review tweeted about this and said, "This is hilarious. From 2022 to 2024, everything Biden did was correct. Everything Biden did was correct," over and over again in quotes from Karine Jean-Pierre, because that was basically her job as press secretary. Then 2025, "Actually, I'm more of an independent. Buy my book." I mean, this is basically it. The job, and I've said this before, your job as a White House press secretary is to do propaganda for a president, to lie through your teeth to the American public. And she absolutely did that time and time again. And I called her out for it many times, but that's what she did. She wasn't particularly good at it, in my view. She was pretty mediocre at it. Some have been better than others. I think Sarah Huckabee Sanders impressed me, and I actually even thought Jen Psaki was significantly better than Karine Jean-Pierre, at least. But even Democrats all over the place are just absolutely roasting Karine Jean-Pierre for this in all sorts of comments that have come out after this big announcement that I don't know how she thought was going to go over, but however she imagined it is not how it played out. In Politico, they quote, "One Democratic operative who worked with Jean-Pierre prior to her White House tenure, calling this sudden turnabout the most grifty thing I've seen in a long time. And that's saying something in Washington. She was the public face telling us all that this White House was on track and that Biden was amazing. And now she doesn't even want to be a Democrat," one of the former Biden White House officials said via text. "She's making herself the middle ground here when Republicans hate her. She's not in any position to be a connector of our two-party system, and assuming she could be is just ego." Meanwhile, Axios has even more damning quotes and even more piping hot tea from this little mini civil war on the Democratic side. One former White House official who worked closely with Jean-Pierre told Axios that she was, quote, "one of the most ineffectual and unprepared people I've ever worked with. She had meltdowns after any interview that asked about a topic not sent over by producers. She didn't know how to manage a team, didn't know how to shape or deliver a message, and often created more problems than she solved," the official said. Another former White House official familiar with the dynamics told Axios the amount of time that was spent coddling Jean-Pierre and appeasing her was astronomical compared to our attention on actual matters of substance. A former senior spokesperson in Biden's administration said, "It's hard to believe someone could look at the past year and genuinely think, the party left Joe Biden. That's why I'm leaving the Democratic Party." I agree with this. I really do. I mean, the idea that she has any credibility or that she can tell us about how broken the White House is, baby, you broke it by lying and betraying the American public. She literally got at the podium after the disastrous Joe Biden debate where his cognitive decline was put on clear display for even those who had denied and gaslit for years, started to admit it and said he was actually fine and sharp as ever and that it was just a bad night or whatever. So she has no credibility. She has participated and even masterminded, you could say, the destruction of the credibility of the White House. And I am still not over this idea that anyone betrayed Biden. No, Biden betrayed the country and his party by running for re-election when he was not fit to serve another term, and he knew it. But he clung to his pride and his ego and his selfish desire and his narcissism that only I can beat Trump, when really I think at this point nothing is further from the truth. That is what happened. The Democrats didn't betray him. So for her to try to spin a victim narrative for her boss is absurd, but I guess in keeping with her career to date, I guess. Here's a little bit from a video that KJP put out announcing this book and teasing her new bold stance as an independent.
Hi, I'm Karine Jean-Pierre, and I am the author of a new book that's coming out this fall called Independent. And the reason I wrote this book coming out of the White House, serving as White House press secretary was an honor and a privilege. But since I have left, the people that come up to me, strangers that come up to me just across the country as I'm traveling, and sometimes right in my neighborhood, at a grocery store, supermarket, airport, my daughter's school, the number one question they ask me is, Karine, how do we get out of this? How do we protect our democracy? How do we protect vulnerable communities among us? What do we do next? And this is my answer. And what I mean by that is, in an era of misinformation, disinformation, the regressiveness of social policy, what we're seeing currently right now, What I have decided to do, and I really have thought long and hard about this, is to follow my own compass. I think we need to stop thinking in boxes and think outside of our boxes and not be so partisan. If you are willing to stand side by side with me, regardless of your how you identify politically, and as long as you respect the community that I belong to and vulnerable communities that I respect, I will be there with you. I will move forward with you.
I hate everything about this little video. I mean, she said a bunch of words that sound wonderful but mean nothing. It's a whole lot of corporate PR speak, and it's not actually saying anything meaningful to be like, I'm independent and nonpartisan, but as long as you respect me and want to work on marginalized communities and uplifting them and combating regressive social agendas and a bunch of other statements that basically capture all my opinions, as long as you agree with all my opinions, we can set aside parties and work together in this way that's totally, amorphous and ambiguous and not at all defined or specific. It's not stunning. It's not brave. It's kind of pathetic. To me, she has no credibility left whatsoever and is in no position to be healing our partisan divide, something I support and think needs to be done, but not by her and not by flogging some terrible book that was probably ghostwritten and probably she's been planning for months. Even when she was still doing this work, she's now probably going to decry. The whole thing is just so not genuine to me and perfectly sums up the collapse of the Biden administration. But what do you guys think? Do you still somehow like Karine Jean-Pierre? Do let me know in the comments. Up next, we got to talk about someone the Trump administration just appointed to a significant position in the administration who is raising some serious eyebrows because honestly, he seems like an extremist. And to me, kind of like a fascist. Plus, he's got some extremely seedy ties and connections. Here's some news reporting announcing the nomination of Paul Ingrassia.
President Trump has nominated Paul Ingrassia to lead the U.S. Office of Special Counsel. He's currently serving as the White House liaison for Homeland Security. Ingrassia was there as those convicted in the January 6th attack on the Capitol were released from prison. He's also a former far-right podcast host and an election denier. The Office of Special Counsel investigates worker complaints from across the federal civil service.
And here's what Trump said, announcing his nomination. I am pleased to nominate Paul Ingrassia to head the United States Office of Special Counsel. Paul is a highly respected attorney, writer, and constitutional scholar who has done a tremendous job serving as my White House liaison for Homeland Security. Paul holds degrees from both Cornell Law School and Fordham University, where he majored in mathematics and economics, graduating near the top of his class. Congratulations, Paul. So first off, Trump is overstating this dude's qualifications. He's only been out of law school for a couple of years, so he's not some renowned constitutional scholar, at least not yet. And that's no shade. It's just kind of a reality check. And secondly, here's one thing that really disturbs me. This dude has direct ties to some of the seediest and nastiest and most hateful and extreme people on all of the right, such as Andrew Tate. As of May, just last month, this dude had a picture pinned of him with Andrew Tate at the top of his Instagram feed. He's also been closely associated with Nick Fuentes, the alt-right streamer and really open anti-Semite. Andrew Tate is also very anti-Semitic and constantly insulting people and calling them Jews and also homophobic, but whatever. Don't even worry about that right now. So for the Trump administration to be claiming to be fighting anti-Semitism, even to the point of deporting people because they criticized Israel in op-eds, yet appointing people to important positions who have close ties with some of the most virulent anti-Semites in all of modern American politics is really not great and not consistent whatsoever. But more important than that, much more important, is that this guy's actual views seem terrifyingly extreme and radical. For example, here's a clip of him laughing and suggesting it's based to think that women don't deserve the right to vote.
You've probably, if you've been watching the show for the short time I'm here at LFA TV, you may realize it. I don't want a woman as a vice president. My wife, I am married to the biggest misogynist this side of the Mississippi, by the way. My wife literally thinks women should not vote. I tend to agree with her a lot. Unless,
She's
of
very
course,
based. sorry, but the 1800s called and they want their morality and ethics back. Maybe it's just a joke. I'm not really sure that it is actually. This is an actual strain of thought among some of these edgelord internet types. But women do actually deserve equal participation and rights in a society that's going to tax them and make demands of them. And they have every right to have a say in how it's operated. And if you don't think women should have basic equal legal rights, you have no place in a high-level position in the federal government, in my view. He has other takes out there on the record that are just like strange. Like he said that forget the normal argument for reparations, which I disagree with, where people are like, oh, the descendants of slave owners or just all of society should have to pay reparations to the descendants of slaves. He has said on the record that the descendants of slaves should have to pay reparations to the descendants of slave owners, which makes no sense, makes far less sense even than the actual reparations proposal, which I disagree with. And he just said it with like no additional context, so maybe he's just a troll. But either way, doesn't belong in the White House, and Trump shouldn't be trusting him or tying his name to such an extreme person. But again, on the actual matters of law and the Constitution that Trump is praising him on, this guy has deranged views. I'll read you a recent tweet thread. Paul wrote in August of 2023, when Trump gets back into office, he should remove his 3 Supreme Court picks and replace them with true loyalists. Side note, the president does not have the authority in our Constitution to remove Supreme Court justices. Only Congress could do that through impeachment. After all, the 2020 election could and should have, he says, been decided by the Supreme Court through the Texas lawsuit, much like the court did in Bush v. Gore. I like the sound of future justices Giuliani, Eastman, Clark, and Powell. Those are the types he should pick in the next administration, especially with the prospect of Clarence Thomas's retirement. Someone replied, no, I don't agree, and I support Trump. It's not about picking loyalists. They need to be true constitutionalists. To which Paul replied, Trump is the Constitution. No, he is not. The Constitution is the Constitution. Donald Trump is just a man who's been elected to an office, but still must abide by the rules of our system and the rule of law. And the attitude this guy is espousing is one that essentially views the president, or at least this president, as a king. That's terrifying. Frankly, that's fascist. And a person like this should not be welcome in any serious White House or administration. The fact that the Trump administration has allowed seedy people like this to infiltrate it and reach high levels and serious points of influence in a way it really didn't in the first Trump term, to me is one of the greatest red flags and disappointments about Trump's second term in the Oval Office, so far at least. What do you guys think? Can you see some defense for this guy? If you can, I'm honestly curious. I'm listening, but I'm not going to be holding my breath, waiting for an explanation that convinces me I should support this guy being given a position of influence or power. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Do hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe if you aren't yet. Remember to send in voice notes, check out the merch, subscribe to my bonus channel. And with that, we'll talk again real soon.